Welcome back, everyone. I'm Josh Corum.
I'm Victoria Hartman.
Awesome. And today we're doing something a little different. Normally it's just Victoria and I talking about sex, science, or some sort of article or something like that.
Journal article. Yep.
Yeah. But today, to kind of change it up a little bit, we have the esteemed Carol Queen with us.
Yes. Dr. Carol Queen?
Excuse me. Dr. Carol
That's okay.
Queen. Renowned sexologist from San Francisco.
Yes.
I was at CVS, and your long list of accolades was about the same length as my receipt. So, you've done all these things. You're the sexologist of Good Vibrations. Which I have a question about in just a second.
Okay.
You run the Vibrator Museum. You're the founder and director of the Center for Sex and Culture in San Francisco, which, as you said, your talk has no longer physical location, but an online presence, which is...
Or it will have a better online presence than it has once we fix the website.
Technology.
Technology.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be able to float in the ether when you can't afford your rent anymore.
Sure.
So there's that.
Yeah. Yep.
No, yeah. I feel like Vegas is following right behind.
Oh, please don't say that. We do. We still have rents that are only $1,200 a month. Only $1,200.
I moved here in 2012 and
Yeah.
had a double master for $750.
Oh, those are no. You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Go to Laughlin. You'll find those there.
something. So I also rated your wiki page. Because that's what a good interviewer does. What else have other people asked? You're a sociologist. You studied sociology.
Yeah, I'm a trained sociologist. I got my bachelor's in sociology, and then I went, ooh, there's such a thing as sexology? I think I'll go there.
Yeah. So I'm sociologist as well. I don't know if you know Barb Brentz.
Yes.
I'm under her.
Yay.
She's my chair.
Well, hail fellow, well met.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a year of grad school in sociology, and then I fled
To the institute.
sex.
You were smart.
That's what I did.
That's what you should have done. You did exactly what you should have done.
Yes, we almost have him over to our side. He's still debating.
Well, these days, I was in sociology during the years that the sex class was called deviance.
Oh,
And when I realized that pretty much everything in the deviance class was things that I either did on Saturday night already or was aspiring to do, that maybe this isn't the right space for me. But since then, and that's been 30 years, and it's a good deal more sex positive, or at least space for sex positive research and thinking now than there was.
I left psychology because of that.
Yeah.
I have an undergrad in psych. And
Right.
It's like, I'm tired of telling me things that I do on Saturday night are pathologies.
yeah. And one of the things that Dr. Ted at the Institute always told, at least when I was in class there, is the rest of the field looks at it through the lens of sickness and sin, and through sexology we'll look at it as management. And I really loved that perspective, because it didn't pathologize anything.
See, in sociology now, it's kind of like, so this is what you do? Okay.
Oh,
Like,
good.
We don't. It's
Good.
there's like very little judgment.
That's good.
Especially with the whole postmodern movement,
Right.
a lot of qualitative analysis has come about.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yep.
no, I interviewed 5 people. That's science. Here you go. Here's an article. And so,
Right.
I mean, it has its ups and downs.
Sure.
but,
It has positives and negatives.
It's definitely less like, prescriptive as opposed to just.
And really, when that boils down to what voices are absent and haven't we taken into account already, we could only find 5 of them. Well, that's a start.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I love about science is it's you can build on each previous attempt. You just keep building on it, and then you create a library of facts that you can then say, well, maybe we can build something out of this. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
going back to this question I had, well, I have several questions, but this is the first one. So you're a sexologist. So Good Vibrations is a sex toy shop.
Yes.
A very famous sex toy shop, right? but you're an on-staff sexologist at a sex toy shop. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the things that, another thing Dr. Ted said all the time was that sexology basically is what people do and how they feel about it. And when people walk into Good Vibrations, they are either like, woohoo, I'm going to get some toys, or they're experiencing great trepidation. They think there's something wrong with them. They really hope they can find something to fix whatever they perceive to be wrong. They have never had an orgasm. They think they're supposed to be having simultaneous orgasms with their boo. There's all the things. They still want to shoplift the anal toy instead of buy it because they're ashamed to walk up to the counter. Like we have to tie the butt plugs to the wall. And so in that context, particularly given that Joni Blank, our founder, was somebody who was a master's in public health and a sex counselor, therapist, sometimes educator, the mission includes making sure that good information is available so that we can take that whole range of people in and help them as they need to be helped. And that means a lot of sex ed for the staff. So one of the things being a sexologist means is that I and my colleague Andy work up the sex ed that the staff needs in order to meet the people as they come in.
Just a second.
Train.
It's the train.
We are the world's only vibrating museum too.
That's awesome.
Just pointing that part out.
Because the Antique Vibrator Museum, we can't plug those vibrators in because they might catch on fire because they're so old.
No.
So yeah. So I feel all welcome here now that I've put that vibration.
Yeah.
Vibrator museum.
Yeah.
Vibrating
museum, right?
And so it turns out also that the other thing that the other people who need to have somebody who can talk at some sort of a deep level about sexuality and answer questions is the press.
Oh,
It's the press.
Yes.
And so I do a
yeah.
lot of the press for the company. It's guerrilla marketing in a way, but it's also, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to talk to an awful lot of people in the press over the course of about 30 years and help put ideas out in the world that I hope that people will get access to. And if they didn't already get them in sex ed, no, they didn't.
I don't know if this
Then
job...
hopefully now they will.
Yeah, I don't know if this job exists, but I see time and time again, just building off what you were saying, that you could make a career, if you can market it right, you could make a career as being the almost like sexual media or like consultant. Like, okay, you're going to put out an article, something happened in a company, or the company wants to put out something that's salacious or something to that effect. Like, you can make a career of like, all right, this is the language you use to not let this blow up in your face.
You should allow me to vet that first.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that.
And I think that's a much more beneficial approach in a sex toy shop. And I wonder, like, how much training other sex toy shops give their staff outside of marketing training.
Right.
This is how you sell this product
Right.
versus this is giving good sex information. So I like that approach. That's good.
Well, I think there are brands now that are taking this opportunity, because it is an opportunity on that level, but also a responsibility more seriously. But it's true that it is a sort of an odd space to put an academic.
Yeah.
And I like having an unusual set of opportunities and a set of spaces where I know that people who don't otherwise read academic treatises about sex and Journal of Sex Research and all of those other things will actually maybe get touched by the knowledge that I got in higher education and be able to take it away and do something with it. So that's, and it's a couple of clicks away too from a sexologist who works with singles and couples and like the sex therapy side of sexology, the clinical sexologists. I don't have one-on-one meetings with people that way, but we talk pretty deeply to customers who need to talk pretty deeply, and it's you got to be able to walk onto the job knowing that somebody might ask you anything.
Right.
There still aren't that many places where you can ask somebody anything.
No.
There are more than there used to be. But now you have to wonder, where did they get that information? So, and one for me, 1 foot in the community, and 1 foot in education. That's how I always have done it.
My favorite place when I was younger, you were talking about this in your talk about where you were able to ask questions and where you got this information. One of my favorite places to get that growing up, and this may be why I'm here today, because I remember watching this show when I was like 12, 13, maybe 14, was Talk Sex with Sue Johansson. For some reason, we got it. I was living in Kentucky with my dad in like the middle of nowhere, and like we got Sue Johansson like late at night, and I'm like,
wow.
this woman is amazing. I just could not stop watching the show, and I'm of course watching it by myself in the middle of the night.
And she's Canadian too, so that's a plus.
Yeah.
It's got to be a plus.
Yep. So you had
No, go ahead. You wanted to ask.
Well, actually, so in your talk tonight, it really stood out to me the conversation of sex positivity, and not just from a professional standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. Sex positivity always, or at least in my training, the sex positivity meant what a person is into, it has the right to be celebrated, right? And it doesn't matter what you're into. It's going to be okay. What you like is okay. And then I started seeing the same shift that you mentioned in your talk about it started to become, well, if you're not into what I'm into, what you're into isn't exactly okay. And I had a personal experience as well where I went to one of the regional Burning Man sort of offshoots here in Nevada. And just walking into the gate, the first thing that came out of their mouths is, you need to bend over so we can spank you as your initiation. And I went, I didn't consent to that. And they actually tried to shame me into leaving. And I said, I paid my ticket, I'm coming in. And I managed less than 24 hours there because some of the supposed sex positive tents that were there, if I went in and just was kind of checking it out and feeling out the environment, I would, in each instance, I got approached and asked why I wasn't participating, and then told, as I answered, well, I'm not quite sure that I'm really into this yet. I'm trying to just discern how I feel about it. It was like, well, then you have a problem and we want you to leave. And I'm like, wait, but on the outside of your tent, it says a sex positive tent or some derivative thereof. And when you were talking about that earlier, it really resonated with me, this idea that sex positivity is about what I'm into is okay, but what you're into might not be. And I wanted you to kind of like expand on what you were talking about in the talk, or maybe like for the audience, tell them what you were talking about.
Or that if you're not into this, like you said, you're not sex positive.
Or you're not sex positive, right.
Well, I was talking about sex positive as the way that it's used currently, often being much more like what you're describing. And I boil it down to people going, yes, I love sex, which honestly, awesome. I mean, far be it from me to think that that's a bad thing. If someone loves sex, that's kind of a plus for most people, right? But that's not the definition of sex positive. Sex positive does not mean I feel positive about sex. That's a total misnomer. But I think that a lot of people have sort of taken that on. I've heard people use sex positive as a synonym for kinky.
Okay.
Which it's not. I mean, if kinky people are sex positive together, well, yay team. But that's not what it means either. It doesn't mean if you come into this space, we're going to do anything we want to you, please. That's pretty coercive.
Right.
And what I heard sex positive represented as back in the 80s at the Institute, and I say this really purposely, that it developed as a concept because we live in a sex negative culture.
Right.
So what are the problems with sex negativity? Shame, opprobrium, telling people they're not okay the way they are. All these things that any of us who step away from a normative sexual profile or gendered profile too, or relational profile, get thrown at us by people who are more conservative. And so how do you make space for all of that? But if you're going to do that, you can't just say, oh, yay, all the diversity. That's an extremely important start. It's crucial. But you can't have a positive experience with diversity if people are not being consensual.
Right.
People need to learn. People need to have access to, sex positive for them resources like medical and educational resources. So it really is a philosophy, in my view, that asks us, what would it take? What would the culture changes need to be for everyone to have a positive experience with their sexuality, whatever that sexuality might be? And, for asexuals, it might be, everybody stop macking on me. I don't want to.
Right.
And for all, like the sexy sex people, it would be like, let me find a room full of people who all want to do this stuff with me, and let's talk about it comfortably. There's so many little moving parts, which is one of the reasons that you can't just snap your fingers and go, this is the definition of sex positive, okay, boom, we're done. It's a generational and then some justice project as far as I'm concerned. But what it really isn't is, woo-hoo-hoo, I had an orgasm and I can tell you how to have one too. What, you don't have one right now? What's wrong with you?
Right.
It's not a way to put a different kind of shame onto our sexualities.
Right.
And I just think that's a space that backfires. And sex positivity is too important because too many people are still fighting this opprobrium and shame for a bunch of sexy people to go, well, if everybody isn't doing what we're doing, then
Well, then we're perpetuating the same thing that we're trying to fight.
Judgment.
Right, judgment.
Judgment.
But I think there's how can I put it? Like trying to hold on to this thing that's fleeting, right? So because I think people have that reaction to individuals who are not as we'll say the sex positive spectrum, right, that you mentioned, that aren't at that same level. I realize it comes off as shame, and it probably is to some extent, because I think when you get to that level, I think people try to hold on to that because, as I've said many times, when you are with someone new and you're having that negotiation of what you're gonna, what you're into, ultimately it comes down to, while some people call it a negotiation, I call it compromising to the conservative, because that's inevitably what you're going to do. No one ever shames anyone. A lot of times in those negotiations, it's never, well, you're the more liberal one, we're going to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's always, I'm not going to do this, which is a boundary, which is fine, and I get that, but it's always, we have to conform to that. And if I go, well, oh, you're not in anal sex, I'm out of here. You're the asshole, in that kind of realm. So when people get to that level of complete freedom and you're not a part of it, I think they worry about losing it, because suddenly now they're conforming to that conservative side, and it's just going to keep like air being slowly let out of a balloon at a certain point.
And I'm trying to put my mind into the space of the people who made the tent, right?
Yeah.
That you described,
Right.
Victor, and I can imagine that having someone who doesn't want to come in and automatically do the things that the other people are doing isn't just possibly a little buzzkill,
Right,
although
right.
there could have been a really good exhibitionism, voyeurism situation worked with that. Like make lemonade, honestly. Somebody might learn something.
I mean,
You never know.
it was a burner event, so I'm sure there was a lot of buzz thing happening too.
But also, I can picture it being harder to be your free self.
Right.
If you're saying to yourself, ooh, that person, it might not be comfortable with what I'm doing. So it becomes are they worrying that you're not feeling safe in the space? Or they not feeling as safe in the space anymore? I mean, it's complicated.
It's complicated, yeah.
And I think it's okay for it to be complicated. I mean, that seems important to me.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I think the problem that I saw, and this is as someone who's a sex educator and sexologist, is the approach of the person who reprimanded me for not wanting to participate.
Oh, yeah.
There would have been so many other ways to communicate. Hey, well, while you're, trying to figure out whether or not you want to participate, let's go over here and we'll have a chat. There are so many ways that it could have gone, and I get the defensiveness, and I think it could have been muted in a way that would have allowed me or whoever to feel more welcome, even to negotiate with oneself. Is this a space I want to be in? So I get what you're saying. Yeah,
but that complicated area can be tricky to can be dangerous for some people though.
Sure.
They feel, they're worried about the person being offended by what they're doing, or
or it's a lot easier to know how to behave and how to act and how to communicate if you're in a space where everybody's like. And when you get in a more heterogeneous space, whatever that might mean, and whatever kind of space we're talking about, it becomes a more difficult process to know what the appropriateness level of the whole thing is.
Right.
And I don't want to put any horses back into any barns, nor am I talking about horses in barns here exactly. But I do think that.
But not to shame you, if that's your.
No, by no means.
Right.
That is not what I'm saying either.
Right.
But I do think that there's a way in which sex positivity came out into a more mainstream space without people going through the process of becoming sex positive in the way that it used to be. And now somebody's going to say, okay, boomer at me, right? Because
okay, boomer.
It's like 2020 now. What am I even what am I trying to time travel?
Right.
But the fact is that this did come from a cultural space that included, HIV and dealing with it in San Francisco. San Francisco had some of everybody running around trying to figure out how to be together in community. And I'm not sure that's exactly how people get introduced to it these days.
Right.
And there was value in that.
Yeah.
Right.